So last time we had this conversation a couple weeks ago, we were at part one of creating a multiplayer game. What was different about our meeting from last week to the thing that we recorded? I'm going to let Gene speak specifically to about there was a one additional part I think Gene had to add in to the story that wasn't available in the week previous that he was now able to add into his story. But I believe the story ends off almost exactly the same spot as we did previously. Is that right, Gene?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
I got pretty close to it. So,
Okay.
yeah, in order to have a recorded version, we went over pretty much exactly what we did last week. And last week I left off at realizing that we needed some spawners
Hmm.
because there's new ways to spawn things.
That's what it
And
was.
so I stopped before then because I felt like that was a good stopping point. I didn't want to fragment. We had begun sort of copying over some of the spawners from multiplayer sample, and instead of being halfway, I say, okay, let's just start this segment off having the player. So I have a demo level. I call it demo, but no way to spawn it yet. And just to recap, our player has a lot of things on it. So let's just go over that really quick. But we have input. We have a character input. If I open this up, you'll see that it's capturing WASD and it's sending events forward, backward, left, right. We have a script canvas. This canvas is empty, but we're going to fill this out. But I wanted to just see this cylinder get spawned on the client and on the server first before we start getting into scripting behaviors for this guy.
Okay. And then
And we have, oh yeah, go on.
I was going to say, and also if you could just poke at your script too to show what scripts we finished on last time from Visual Studio side.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I think maybe you're talking about
Yes.
our auto component.
Yes.
So this is our networking auto component. We called it simple script player component, and really its only job is to make sure, this is what the constraint require, to make sure that we have a network character component on our entity, or any entity that uses this component will require network character component. And well, the reason for that is because this component has some nice features for moving around in the world physically. And then two network inputs we're sending. So we're sending forward, back, and left, right. And we're exposing that to script so that we could do things in script canvas instead of C++. And just to validate that, our player here has that script somewhere on it. Here it is. Probably can't read. I mean, it's pretty. I can't increase the font size on in editor, but there is a simple script player component here.
Great.
Okay, cool. So now we just want a way to spawn this. And actually, along those lines, this is not a spawnable yet. So let's make our player spawnable.
Awesome.
Uh, create prefab. I right-click, create prefab. And let's just save this as part of the level. Again, I always disclaimer this. I would not normally save my player prefab in the level because player prefab will probably get used on every level. But this way, if I save it to the level, I could just zip up the level and then theoretically send this level to anyone and have them run it. All right, so let's see, player.prefab saved in the level. I'll save it out. Okay, cool. We're all learning together here. All right. Oh, this was a video on YouTube I had up from a few months ago. So we'll be using this a little bit, like we use this to build out the simple script player component, but some of the things like spawning are different. So this video will fill in, or what we're filming now, what we're here to do today will fill in those gaps. But let's go to GitHub and let's go to multiplayer sample. And we're going to see what's all required to spawn. We're going to take a look at their spawner system. Cool. So I'm just going to pop into the code and I'm going to look at the file list to see what I think we might need. So this is all of multiplayer samples files, code files. I'm just going to do a search for spawner. Okay, maybe we'll want that. I'm going to write some of these down. So we could go back and take a look at what these actually do. But that definitely looks promising. Network player spawner component, auto component, network test spawner. Probably don't need test stuff. And then we have the implementation of that auto component. Okay, so that looks promising as well. Network prefab spawner component. Maybe. Although I think we wanted to stick to players, right? Because we're not. This sounds more promising, but we'll check this out. Oh, this isn't under perf test, so okay, yeah, we'll ignore that. And then these certainly look very important. We have a iPlayer spawner in the spawner folder, spawners folder. I'm guessing anything in that spawners folder we'll probably want to copy over.
Hey, Gene, will you do me a favor and zoom in a little bit on this page,
Oh
please?
yeah, absolutely, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
How's that? Readable?
Yeah, better.
And then round robin looks really promising. Let's see if there's anything else. I don't know. No, it's all look fine. Okay, cool.
So is there a method for you to be able to detect if one of these scripts are needed or not? Are you just looking for player based, or is
I'm just
there?
looking for spawner stuff,
Okay.
really. Yeah, just looking for things we can copy. Okay, let's see. So I wrote some of these down. Let's just go take a look at them. The first one was that auto gen component, and it was called network player spawner component. So let's take a look. Network player spawner component. Okay. And this has, yeah, I think we saw this last time. So this looks good. This has a snap to ground, which seems useful, and then a spawnable. So this is definitely, I like what I'm seeing here, right? Because it makes sense that a spawner would need a spawnable. So this is probably where we pass in the player prefab we just made, and then this will be what we add to our spawner entity. And also useful is probably the history of this. We could see the other files that were maybe brought in with this. Can we take a look at just the code changes for this? Oh yeah. Okay, this is looking okay. Yeah, network player spawner component. This is the implementation. Yep, we broke these down as well. Multiplayer sample
Do you want to give
system
us
component.
what specific layer are we looking at here?
I'm looking for changes that are required to get spawnables working in our project as quickly as possible. So what I'm basically doing is I looked at the history of a file that I thought was really useful and just going through and seeing like, okay, yeah, like here's an implementation of that auto component, so we're definitely going to want that. And look, there's some changes to the project's system component. So like, we'll probably want that as well. Yeah, it might even be useful just to grab that whole system component. Let's see what file is this. Okay, round robin. Yes, we could probably copy that wholesale. But yeah, I'm looking for things that we could copy wholesale, and then also where in the existing code base we might need to update.
Got it.
But I guess we can start finding stuff that we could copy wholesale, right?
Sure. Sounds great.
Cool. And then bring those over. So yeah, let's see, network player spawner component. Like we're definitely going to want that. Copy raw contents. Okay. Well, let's see how far we can get with just doing
Copying
it
it over.
the cheap
Yeah.
way. Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to probably need to recompile, so I'll close down the editor. And the asset processor. Oh, asset processor went with the editor. That's great. Okay. So our first one is this other autogen, so I'll add this next to this autogen. And we'll call it, copy that. Network player spawner component dot auto component. All right. We'll copy this. Cool. And what else did I write down? Oh, the implementation of this. So source, components, network, player spawner component. Cool. So these two. So let's do that as well. we don't have a components folder here. Let's add one. We'll add one there, just to be consistent.
Mm-hmm.
It'll probably become useful when we start doing includes, if we stay consistent. Do this one, and this one is network player spawner component. Copy that. And we'll make the H file. Network player spawner component H. Alright. I think that was everything in the components folder that we needed. And now this entire spawners folder looked really useful. Those 3 files in here. So we will copy pasta that. Spawners. Alright, iPlayer spawner, grab that. Get the round robin. And the header file for round robin spawner.
Just for my knowledge, what do you mean by the header file? What is that? What does that mean?
Oh, jeez, just copied the whole wrong thing. Ah, 1 second.
Sure.
Yeah, so anyway, so in C++ you have header files and CPP files. You know, just you want to declare things in one location and then define them in another. And this is not the case in all languages, but C++ does this, and it's a way of breaking out the code, mostly so that you're not including all the implementation. So like,
Got it.
whenever you're including stuff, like these pound includes are literally just copying and paste. Like if you see like this pound include in C++, it's literally just like copying and pasting the contents into this. So you can imagine if you had to copy and paste everything around, it would be really bad. So we break things out. It's also nice to just, you know, you could see what your interface looks like. I think it's kind of clean to read. So instead of having to see all the implementation, you could see, you know, just the interface for this. You could see the methods that are available really quickly without having to like, right, that like this implementation might be like hundreds of lines of code or something like that. So it also just makes things readable.
Pretty good.
I have a question in regards to dissecting a gem. When you
Yeah.
create a new gem, it creates 4 different layers where you can place your code. It's editor and editor static, and then it's a system component static, or system static. Sorry, without the word component. So what is each layer responsible for?
Well, I would imagine the editor stuff is only available, it's only going to get compiled in with the editor, and it's going to be left out of any launchers. So you could throw like editor tools in there, like if you want to add a new, well, actually, some components are just, I was thinking at first, you know, you could have editor tools where you literally have something in the editor GUI where you have a new button that does something, but sometimes components themselves have just editor features that need to behave differently than runtime, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. I think one thing that comes to mind is like maybe in editor you want to have it look different. Maybe you have like particle effects, but the particles look slightly different in editor, or they're just always playing in editor so that while you're at edit time you could see them. But in runtime you might not want that to happen. You might just want them to trigger when you tell them to trigger, something like this. But that way you could have like an editor version of the component that knows how to spawn itself at runtime differently. Let's see, what else did I write down? This is all I wrote down. So I think we have everything copied. Now we will need to add these all to our files.
Okay.
Oh no, we need to tell CMake about these files. But even then, I don't think we'd be ready to compile just yet. Let's look at I want to see like the history of where iPlayer spawner gets used. So I'm going to click on the history here because I'm guessing we're going to need to change some other files that like actually rely on these files. And yeah, stuff like this stands out. Like files that already exist that might need to be modified. So what is this doing? Let's see. Yeah, it looks like multiplayer. Let's see what the system component. So we have some system component updates here. What is this doing? Let's see. So it's getting knowledge about an agent. We have to be a little careful since some of these might not be related to the spawner itself, but oh, this definitely looks promising. So it looks like the on player join changes. This looks like we'll need that. Multiplayer spawner though, that override. I don't know that we have that change. Let's look at our our system component. See if we can make out the differences here. So let's see. Network demo system component. Okay. And we don't have a multiplayer spawner. Let's look at this whole file and see what's going on here. Go back to code, gem, source. Let's just open up the system component. Grab everything we might need.
So what makes
So,
you think that we couldn't just copy a file as is? Is you think there would be something in here that
well,
would be
yeah,
different?
yeah, exactly. So what I saw was this thing that looked really useful, which was we're trying to spawn, right?
Right.
We're trying to get spawners to work, and I noticed that the multiplayer samples project implements, derives from multiplayer spawner. So right away I'm like, oh, we're gonna want this as well. So let's kind of follow suit and do what the multiplayer sample does. So I'm gonna just grab this, and there might be some other things we need. Like maybe we need tick bus. I'm gonna leave that off for now,
Okay.
and we'll hit walls and then we'll go back and see what's up. But the code comments there are really useful. So that is great, and that they put that under protected, so I'm going to do exactly the same thing here. And this also looks really promising. And player spawner, yes, I want that. And then let's go to the implementation of all this and see what it do. And I will do the same. Okay, so we see reflect method has this is cool. This is like hit effects, weapon stuff. Doesn't look like anything we need just yet,
Mm-hmm.
for spawners at least. And services, probably skip those. Activate. Hey, look at this. I see spawner stuff. Okay, so we're going to register. Oh yeah, okay. So we're going to register ourselves as, because we are what was it? We are an I we are an I multi we are in a multiplayer spawner now. So now we're going to register. It looks like on activate we're going to say, hey, look at me. I am a spawner. And yeah, let's just copy this because that looks really useful.
Now this doesn't get into the details of like how many spawners to spawn, right? This just says activate a single spawner instance.
No, this is actually saying that whenever whenever the system wants to spawn something, look to us on how to do so. At least that's what I'm gathering.
Okay.
Um, and that sort of makes sense because we're gonna have this on player join method. So it's like on player join, we want to do something. On player leave, we're gonna do something. Yeah, and it looks like we're responsible for like create entity, and then on player leave, we're responsible for mark for removal. So I'm just gonna take this. That looks like we want that. And of course, I'm gonna do a search for multiplayer sample system component, and let's replace that with us. We are UI UX system component. Okay, so that looks definitely making some improvements here. What else will we need? I don't know. Let's look at the module. See if there's anything we need to add here related to spawners. No. Yeah, let's see what happens when we try to compile.
All right.
But first let's tell CMake about everything we just added. So to do that, I will open the files.cmake, and I wrote everything down, although my paths probably aren't great. But we did add another thing under source, autogen.
I would assume it's all in the red
Network.
on the right for the new ones, right?
Yeah, is that right? Yeah. This is just what is this? Visual Studio Code telling me stuff has changed.
Oh, that's true. You also have changed.
Although I don't know. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Wait. So that first one was network player spawner component dot auto component typo dot xml, and we also have all the spawners folder stuff. So let's look in there. So that is source spawners iPlayer spawner .h.
And just to emphasize, the scenario in this demo is for a player-centric game where the world exists around the player and not vice versa, right? It's not a persistent world, but the world or the game is created when the player is joining, correct?
Yeah, so it's definitely not persistent. So if you shut down the level, it's not like this is going to be saved anywhere on the cloud or something. This is just, I want to start a client and server, or server will spin up a server, and then whenever a client joins, we want that cylinder that we created to be spawned. So actually, let me bring up this. There's a little video in the beginning of this this talk. We want something like this. So these are two players that get spawned in, and then maybe they run around and they hit boxes. They could push boxes around the world. Does that answer your question, or?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. Yeah, let me know. Let me know.
And I assume the orange and the change from those are all script canvas related, right? So physics relates with them, and then there's something inside of your script canvas file that says if on contact, change color of entity or prefabs to a different one so that they know that there's collision.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, so each of these cubes will have some physics colliders on them. There'll be rigid bodies that interact with these players that get spawned in. So there's two clients. So two players got spawned in, and then these boxes will have a script on them that has like some hit detection, and then we'll change the material color, something like this. All right, what did I miss here? Let's see. Oh, the implementation. I don't even know if I grabbed those. Did I? Yeah, I did. Okay, that's good. So we'll add source components network player spawner component. Cool. I think that might be it. And then, oh yeah, this is all going to need a change. So these are all in the namespace of the project I stole them from. So we want to change this to our namespace, which is UI UX network demo. Wonder if I could just do a search for this. Yeah, that looks about right. Let's do a quick glance add all these. I'll just do a find and replace. I think I'm okay doing a find and replace with this. Yeah. Okay. Can we do that? UI, UX. Oh no, I forget the actual name of our network. Hold up, let me just grab the proper namespace. So UI UX underscore network demo. Okay, let's do that. Replace all. Okay, go. Whew. Okay, so now we have no instances of our old namespace that we stole this thing from, or the multiplayer sample. And yeah, I think we added everything. Let's see what happens when we compile. I don't think this app, this O3DE project manager actually builds server.
Okay.
So we need to build that by hand probably. Although now, oh, now I'm wondering what command line this thing actually uses. Okay. Anyways, let's see what's up with the compile errors, at least for editor and game launcher. The editor and game launcher gets built with this, but not the server. Sorry. So what was your question though? Your original question?
Sorry,
Right.
I thought I heard somebody else there. Does somebody else want to say something first?
Yeah, I was just a quick question. Did any of the build dependencies change in the CMake list?
Oh. No, I don't think so. What do we need to? I think because we're just adding files. So, oh no, well we might need to, but I guess we'll hit those errors when we get them. Did you want to take a look at the CMake list? We could go over that.
Oh,
So
sure.
we did add things. We did add things last time. Mostly here. Yeah. So I forget exactly what the normal project comes with, but I think we added these to get compiling. So yeah, multiplayer static, physics static.
When do you choose between private and public, by the way? What's the mindset there?
I think public will also, so if anything depends on this, public will be brought in, whereas private will not. So you could imagine like the dependency list. So if anything depends on this person, then a publicly available one will get absorbed, but privately won't be. So like if you do happen to need it, you'll need to bring it in yourself.
All right, let's see what happened.
Let's check it out.
So it says, I
Okay.
can't really see the error that popped up to you. What did it say to us?
Oh, let's see. Oh, I already clicked past it because I clicked.
okay.
There's a box that said like open some failed build log thing. So I clicked yes, and then so now we're gonna read what's going on here. Okay, so it went through. Oh, I wish it showed us the command it used, because now I'm curious of the commands it used to actually build this, because we're gonna need to do it ourselves. But all right, let's see what we got. Network demo system component, CPP, undeclared identifier multiplayer, iMultiplayer spawner. Okay, so it doesn't know what an iMultiplayer spawner is. And then, yeah, it just looks like it's complaining all about multiplayer stuff. On player join. So I'm just going to do a sanity check. Make sure that our multiplayer gem has iMultiplayer spawner. And then if it doesn't, we will go check out our CMake list and grab those dependencies that we do need. But yeah, just to make sure that like maybe multiplayer sample project might be on a different version, might be relying on a different version of the engine or something that has these things that we don't have. So we will sanity check that. Let's see, what is this one? Oh, no member named in this namespace. Okay. Interesting. Even though we brought that in. Okay. First things first. Let's check this. Let's check this out. So let's look for the I multiplayer spawner in our engine that we're using. And this is an external project. Yeah, I'm using an external project, and I just opened the folder in VS Code. There's better ways of doing this where you create. I'm on Linux, so there's a little bit of hoops to jump through for like getting VS Code for this project all nice and synced up. But I didn't do that for this project, so let's just we'll just go there by hand. Oh, not new folder. I want to open containing folder. And my engine is here. So let's go multiplayer sample.
And this one's just a bit too small for us to read, Gene. So if you call out what you're
Okay.
reading, just so we know what you're doing.
Okay, I'm in the gems folder, and I just want to sanity check that we have a multiplayer spawner. Oh, you know, I think I know what's already going on here, but probably need to include it. But let's just make sure that we're on the right version, right? Okay, so I'm in the multiplayer gem now, code include multiplayer, and I'm looking for a multiplayer spawner anywhere in here. And I think, here it is. Okay, cool. All right. So yeah, we should be able to bring that in. We should fix that. So let's open up this, and let's just include that. Multiplayer. And that is just straight up called I multiplayer spawner. And we probably could have avoided this by looking at the history. You know how we were looking at the history on GitHub?
Mm-hmm.
We could have found all these changes. But let's let's just see how this goes. There might not be too many errors. If there's a ton, then yeah, we'll go back and look at the history. All right, where was that log? Let's go, because there's probably a bunch of these that we're going to need. Okay. Same thing here, probably. What was this? Network demo system component. Although it's possible what we just included. What was that error about? It was complaining about was it just the same thing again? iMultiplayer spawner, the second one?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. This one is complaining about oh, it's again just complaining about multiplayer. Let's recompile and see how noisy it is again. It's already open. Next one. iPlayer spawner. Okay. Let's add it. Cool. Where's that being used? Oh yeah, right here. Okay. So where did we save that? Is that under the spawners? Yeah. Okay.
Is there a reason why we use Visual Code instead of Visual Studio? I'm thinking about IntelliSense and other support.
I know. I miss it. I'm just running on Linux just because I've been doing some debugging around multiplayer testing flakiness on Linux, so I'm just on my Linux machine, so this is what we get. But yeah, ideally we could do this in Visual Studio Code and get some IntelliSense, and that would be amazing. Cool. I'm gonna do another build. Although we could probably catch some other. Oh no. Okay. Never mind. Every build log gets replaced, which makes sense. Okay, round robin. Maybe we could do a few of these. Let's see, what do we have? First one's round robin in network demo system component. Sure, yeah. We need to know about round robin. That makes sense. That was in our spawners. Round robin, spawner. What else do we have? No member I multiplayer. Okay, I'm gonna. Did we already see that? Did we already look up I multiplayer, or was that another one? I don't think we need a sanity check that the multiplayer gem has this though. So I'm just gonna see where that's actually included. Let's go back. Let's go see where I multiplayer. Was it looking for? Oh, just I multiplayer is. Okay, so it's defined inside the multiplayer gems root folder. So we will add it there.
Now, just a time check, Gene. We have 10 minutes before the meeting ends, but I would like. I'm okay to spend some more time here if you're okay, but
Okay.
if anybody else needs to drop off for other meetings, we'll continue on for just a little bit further.
Right.
If yeah, and then of course, if you need to, we'll have it on YouTube later on, so you guys can go ahead and come back to it. But if you're able to hang out with us for a little bit further, that'd be great.
So it was complaining about can't find this file. Although I'm looking here, we definitely have. Let's see, source components, network player spawner component.h. That looks good. Round robin spawner.h. I don't think there's typos there. Let's look at the CMake file and just see how these includes are being brought in. CMake list include. Okay. This is the include directory for ourselves, right? Oh, yeah. So that's only going to bring in stuff in include. I guess. Well, let's just add everything under here. That'll probably get rid of that error. And okay, let's rebuild. I save that. No, I don't need to view the logs because we already have the logs open. And we'll build again. Okay. Fingers crossed. So after this builds, what I'd expect to be able to do is like open up the editor, place a new entity, and then add our new component. What was it called? Network player spawner component, and place that somewhere in the world, and then attach that to our or drag in our player prefab, and then build the server, open up the server, open up a client, and then see our player get spawned in the same location that we put our network player spawner component. All right, let's see. What does this do? Project failed. Sure.
It looks like just one error this
AZ.
time, so that's good.
Yep, just one error chipping away. We need to see where AZ log warn is defined. Sure. No IntelliSense. Let's just actually, you know what? Let's go look back at this multiplayer sample code. We'll steal that really quick, or we'll just do a search. The AZ log warn is used in a million places, so we could just probably search anywhere and find it. But let's just go here and see where. Yeah, that looks promising. AZ core console iLogger. Let's do that. Last error, come on.
Now, did we already have iLogger created as a file?
Yeah, that's just already always existed. That's in AZ core console.
Gotcha.
So it's in the AZ, it's in the AZ core project already for us, and it's used all over the place. So
This looks promising.
It's better. Oh snap! All right, cool. Let's open up the editor and see if my prediction's right. We could place that object in the world, and we'll also need to build the server by hand.
Okay.
Actually, let's see if it built the server. We'll see if there's a timestamp on. Okay, so it's putting this in build Linux bin profile UI. Oh no, it doesn't skip to it. Oh, that's a bummer. Okay. Yeah, see, so we have a UI UX network demo game launcher, but not a dot server launcher. We should
Yeah.
let's see our editor.
And just a note for anybody here, as we're experiencing bugs or seeing things, if you have the skill set or understanding of it, obviously being an open source project, we love to help. So feel free to jump in and help us resolve some of these issues if you have the ability to do so.
Yeah. I don't know if anyone from the project manager team's here, but maybe that would be a good first issue to work on for someone.
Exactly.
All right, we'll make this our spawner. Call it network player spawner. And where's that? Okay, we'll put them somewhere sort of obvious. Okay. And spawner, let's see, is it there? It is! Network player spawner component. Okay. It needs a network binding. I'm cool with that. And spawnable asset, let's point it at our player. Cool. Okay, we don't have a server. Let's just see what happens when we hit Control G though.
Yeah, I'm very
Just
curious. Yeah.
just in case if anyone else runs into this. Control G. We are just in the world here. Okay, let's look at our editor server CVARs. Maybe it's disabled by default, so you can't read this, but I'm typing in editor server SV in the console at the bottom. I hit tab to see all the CVARs related to editor SV underscore, and I see that enabled is false. Let's enable that. Let's run it again. I'm gonna clear the console and then run again. Okay, cool. All right, at least we get an error. Sweet. So we get an error saying the server launcher binary is missing. And it looks like, yeah, it tells us where it was trying to find it. So it was trying to find it inside of bin profile. Bin. So it was trying to find it in our network demo bin profile UI UX network demo server launcher. It looks like it was trying to find it in two different places? It's hard for me to tell. It must be impossible for y'all to tell. Yeah, it looked like it was trying to use two of the same places. Maybe that's just I'm gonna write that down. Looks like there's maybe a typo in the log error. Please build the server launcher or specify using editor sv underscore process. So yeah, so there's this other CVAR editor sv underscore process, which was added so that you could, if you happen to build the server in a completely different location, you can, on your hard drive, you can point directly to it. But we do just want this to be inside of Linux bin profile. So let's do that. I will open up a terminal.
And just so we understand timing, when we do this build, how long do you think this one will take? Is this a longer build or a short build?
I hope not.
Okay.
I really hope not. Because most of the stuff is already built. I don't think there's any difference between the game launcher and the server launcher as far as dependencies go. I think it's kind of the same project. So all the libraries we need are already built. Okay, let's see. What do we call it? UI UX demo, and we're going to want to build it. Let me open up my cheat sheet for building, and I just need to make sure that it's in the same place that the need to make sure it's in the same place that the
And we can't read that. Just
project manager. Oh yeah, let me zoom in. Preferences. Okay, preferences. And we're going to make the font a lot bigger. Where's font? Do you see font? Mono space regular 14.
Thank you for allowing us to mess up your fonts.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to undo this all later.
Whew! Can you?
Yeah,
That must be
perfect.
readable, right?
Yeah, that's readable.
Okay, so wait a second. So let's just make sure. Okay, let's. Oh geez, for giggles, I guess we could build. Well, we'll skip building these, and we're not in automated testing. We're in UI UX underscore network demo. We don't need the editor built. And this build folder is certainly wrong from where I normally put it. Let's see where, I think Project Manager puts it inside of, what was it looking? Actually, that it was like build/Linux. Yeah, I think so. All right. If I'm crazy, anyone let me know if this looks crazy. I think we're okay to build this though.
Let's try it out.
Okay. And I at least know this works. Wow. Awesome. That was fast. Let's make sure. Actually, we could probably just test this right now. Let's rerun it. If the server launcher was indeed built, what we'll see is another window open with the server. And hey, what would be even more awesome is if we see the player. So this level has a shader ball by default, but we'll see the player spawning in this area if we hit Control G.
Now let me
Let's
ask
try
you
it.
real fast before we do
Yeah.
this. How come in some instances we had to close down everything, and then in this instance we did not? What's the difference here?
We weren't building editor, so
Okay.
I only closed down the editor when the editor executable needed to be rebuilt.
Got it.
But since yeah. Cool. Okay, let's see. Oh, there it is.
There's your window.
Let's let the graphics start up. Woo!
Nice.
That is awesome. Okay,
Now-
we have a spawner and a spawnable. That's our player. Next up is getting our player to move. As it relates to time and how long it took, we if you're going to start a multiplayer game, definitely you could start from multiplayer sample, or from our last talk and from this talk, I think there's the community really wants a gem for having some of these spawners just built in, so we could skip all this stuff that we just did with copying and pasting other spawners, hopefully soon. And then maybe we could have another demo displaying that, and we could see how fast it is. Maybe this 1 hour talk turns into a 10-minute talk, which would be awesome.
Love it.
Yeah. Okay, so anyway, so I'm in game mode here. If I hit escape, what I expect to happen is the server to close itself. So let's see. Hit escape. Perfect. Server cleaned itself up, and I'm back in editor mode. Now let's get the players moving. Oh, I lost my mouse though. Oh, that's not fun. Let's see. I'm gonna want my mouse back.
I can see
Sorry,
your mouse
guys.
from our screen. That's interesting.
You can? Oh,
Yeah.
that's so. What a humiliation. All right, I'm gonna close down editor. Reopen editor. Now my mouse is back. Okay. I don't know if I have a bug for that.
Direct you.
Yeah, you just like, okay, 2 pixels to the left. Mark that bug. Editor or
Control tilde might bring your mouse back, by the way.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll try that. And I'm gonna make a note just to add a GitHub issue if I haven't. I might have already done that, but mouse disappears on Linux editor. Okay. Cool. Mouse returned. And this is also bugged on Linux. The viewport is tiny until you refresh the screen by dragging it. Okay. Yeah, and our player already has that script attached. So we don't need to edit the player, we just need to edit the script. And we called it character controller. Oh, so it's not empty actually. Our character controller is not empty. It prints something on start, which is that says character controller is alive. I'm gonna hit Control G again. Let's make sure that print occurs. on the client. Okay, let's see, clear. Oh, we need to make sure I closed down the editor, so editor SV enabled. Let's reset it to true. And I'm gonna run. And I just want to see that that print happened, and it did. That's great. So y'all can't read this, but it says on both the editor server, we see that it printed. So the editor server saw that character controller is alive, and then the editor, the client, the editor itself is the client right now, printed character is alive. So both the editor and the server are running their scripts. And oh, go on.
I was going to say, as just for a quick summary so we can catch up. So we have your script canvas is on which entity currently? So
The player.
the player itself. And then only thing that's in this current script is this on start and a print function, right? So that's
exactly.
That's it so far.
Yep. Just a sanity check.
Yep.
And then at this point, I really recommend looking, and I'm going to do the same thing. I recommend looking at this older workshop on YouTube, multiplayer scripting, and I'm just going to scrub forward to where I show the script canvas, because I don't think any of this part has actually changed. So this is the script canvas for, I don't know if you can hear the audio, probably not, but this is the script canvas for doing input over the network, so network input. Just to talk a little bit about that, how the network input, multiplayer input is going to be different from a single player game, is that everything needs to be in sync. So the network, the client and the server both need to stay in sync. And input is a particular issue because you don't want to wait for the server to say, oh yeah, you press W, now you can move forward. No, on the client needs to see that when they press W, it needs to react quickly. And so Multiplayer Gem has a really cool feature called network input, and this is going to keep things in sync for us. Now, normally on a single player game, what you might do is grab an input handler to receive keyboard events, and then you would just move the player right away. Instead, what we're going to do is our graph is going to capture these events. So we will still need an input handler to grab the events that, WASD was being pressed. But instead, what we're going to do is the script is going to handle what happens when the multiplayer gem wants to create input and process input. So when it's time to create input, we'll say, we'll have the value stored of what is currently being pressed, and we'll send that across the network. And then we'll process it as well. So locally, that happens. I think that happens right away. So locally, what'll happen right away is on the client, what'll happen right away is you'll create the input, you'll handle creating the input, and then it'll just get processed immediately. And then on the server, obviously the creation gets sent up to the server. There'll be some trip time there, and then the server will process the input. And then this will just make sure that both the client and server are in sync. And the graph, this is the entire graph. I don't know if you can see it on YouTube, but it's fairly small. There's like maybe a dozen nodes total.
Awesome.
So we'll copy that, and I gave an overview, but we could go over just as I'm doing it, and y'all can sanity check me as I'm making variables and misspelling them and stuff like that. Okay, I'm gonna make this bigger, but okay, we need and actually we're fortunate enough I can zoom into the graph. So if the graph is too hard to read, I totally can zoom in like that.
Great.
That probably is easier to read.
Yep.
So it looks like we need an input handler, 2 of them. So on graph start, we're going to make sure that we're listening for keyboard input. This is nothing multiplayer just yet. This is just straight up local keyboard stuff. And I forgot what our event names were. So let's open up our input. Where is that at? I think it's the asset editor.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to look at our input bindings and write down what they're called. Okay, so it's spelled out completely forward underscore backward and left underscore right.
So the scripts are listening for these events specifically
Yeah.
that are captured by the asset editor.
The scripts, let me just make sure that so we defined input bindings and those input bindings are bound to like physical keyboard presses, and so our input script is going to send events, and those names that I just mentioned are the name of the event being sent. So we need to listen for that. So
Got it.
so input handler event name forward underscore backward, and this other one was left underscore right. And let's store those values locally, because again we can't act on this just yet. We need to wait for the multiplayer gem to say like, okay, now I'm ready. Let's give me the input that just happened, and then another one for processing the input that just happened. So we'll store these off as numbers, and let's name the variable something similar. Forward, backward, and we'll create another one for left, right, and in this script I wonder if we could just save the value here. We probably can. I think we could do a little shortcut here. Before I was like actually setting, I was doing something like this, set, and I was setting on pressed, on held, on release, setting the value. But since we're storing it, this would be useful if we let's say we didn't want to do something on held, then we couldn't, we'd have different logic here. But since we're grabbing the value no matter what happens, I think we could just store it directly.
Okay. And then how did you, just so for people's understanding, you just dragged
Oh
it
yeah.
onto the node itself, right?
Yes. Yeah, so from the script variable manager, I grab the variable that I want to save, and I could drag that right into the value property. And you could see it has some intelligence about what value it accepts. So let's say it was, let's say I made like a vector 3. I couldn't store that. See, unable to drop into slot. So it kind of helps you out there. Okay, so now we're storing. Whenever the keyboard gets pressed, we know the forward, backward is set. Oh, look, there's a typo. Not that it matters much, but let's just fix it. And next, now we're on to the more multiplayer part where we're going to actually get the create input event and handle it. Create input. So we have our UI UX network demo. Simple script player component bus handler. We're doing one for create input. And so we need to, oh, is it just, oh, this number, oh yeah, okay, so there's some things I would like to fix here. I don't know if this is just front end work, but I'm not sure what this number is. This might be, maybe a delta? I don't know. Okay, but anyways, we're going to want to create network input and send it back. So this is simple script player. So I'm just doing a search for simple script player component. That's the name of the component we made, our network component. And I'm going to take this create from values node. And this is accepting forward, back, left, right. And how did we get to that? That's defined in our auto component. So let's go back to our auto component just to show you that. So we have our auto component, our simple script player auto component. Remember, we have these two floats. So forward, back, left, right. Forward, back, left, right. So that's what we're filling out. And we'll we will store the values that we took from the keyboards being pressed into this node.
Now, Gene,
And
how
this is
often do those get updated? Do those get updated every tick?
is kind of, yeah. I mean, it's on its own tick, so it's not like the tick bus tick, but the networking layer has its own tick. And so yeah, that'll be getting grabbed like 30 frames a second.
Got it.
Yep. And this is a little bit of a weird UI, but this create input needs to receive the network input struct, so we're just going to pass it back in this way. So this is one of the few cases where like it looks like your script is going backwards, but it's flowing in this direction. So it's create input. We get the message, hey, I need input, give me input. So we go, okay, we'll give you input. Create the node to create the input here, and then we just drag the result of these two values, which is the new struct that we just made, and we're going to pass it back into create input. And then we're going to do the same for process input. I guess we could add it here. Add remove, let's see, yeah. So now we have process input. If this gets too noisy, let me just move this up. Process input, what do we have coming in here? We have, yeah, this number, does this give us IntelliSense? Okay, I want to update this, but this number should be like a delta time, right? So, you know, depending on the delta, you might move more or less. And then the input. So like whatever got sent here on the other end will be received here. So locally, we could just, you know, locally, this is sort of the same thing, but on the server, you can imagine there's like this is actually going across the network, and then process input is able to use that. Now to get properties out, right now this isn't super useful. This is a simple script player component network input, but we actually want to extract forward, back, and left, right from that. And just some cheap knowledge, if you ever need to extract properties in script canvas, there's an extract properties node. So we're going to use that. And as soon as we drop this in, we should see our forward, back, left, right is saved or is exposed. And I'm going to save that out to its own number. I'm going to call that net underscore forward, back. I'm going to save that. And we'll make another for network left, right. Cool.
So why would you use different properties, or sorry, different variables for the same value?
Or why? Maybe we could ask why even use variables to begin with, because the script is so small. I just like making variables because theoretically this graph could be a lot bigger depending on how interesting your character controller gets. But these are different values. So this value here is what's being received by the keyboard at this very moment.
Right.
And really the server's not even going to have this, right? No one's pressing WASD on the server. So, but this script is going to be running both on the server and the client. So you're sort of right in the sense of like, oh, the forward backward is going to be the same. But keep in mind these are both running on the server and the client, and we really want to make sure that we're using the network input and not the keyboard input, because those things need to be in sync. If those two ever go out of sync, right? If the character thinks that it needs to do something different than this, and the server never knows about it, then you're going to desync, and we don't want that to happen. So we're going to store these and be very explicit that this is the network forward back. This is, and in fact, this is the one we care about at after this point. So all the remaining logic for processing input is going to rely on network input, not the input from our keyboard.
Got it.
Cool. And there's this really useful try move with velocity. This was on our network character component. That's why we told our auto component that we made, we said, hey, anyone using this, we're just going to require a network character component so that we could really, we're just trying to get at this one value here, or this one node, try move with velocity. And this is going to move with physics. So we're not just moving transform, we're moving through the world physically. And this is going to take in a velocity and a delta time. So speaking of delta time, let's save our delta time. So we'll call that net delta time. And we get that, again, it's hard to tell because here, let me zoom in. This process just says number. This is actually the tick time. So we're going to save that, and we're going to store that in our try move. And now we just need to give it a velocity, and our velocity will be, I think, our velocity should be defined based on forward, back, left, right. I think that makes sense.
Right.
So let's do that. Let's create a new vector 3. Let's search for vector 3. Maybe we'll find a create from value somewhere in here. Vector 3. Anything from values? Is that right? That looks promising. Yes. That takes in three floats and spits out a new vector. So that's cool. And our let's make our x direction will be left, right, and our y direction will be forward, back. And in this graph, I have a multiplier just to add some speed. I guess we could do that. We'll do that. Multiply by number. Multiply. Is there one for vector 3? Multiply by number.
Now, just to understand your multiplier, are you using the multiplier to increase over time, or just multiply the value in which it's stable at?
Just to multiply the value that it's stable at. I think I mean we could see how this looks, but that'll just control how how fast the player's moving around. If it's like a snail's pace, then you might not even notice that it's moving.
I see.
Okay, but I'm fairly happy with this graph. So just to go over it, we are processing input. So this is both happening on the client and the server. But let's say that we're the server. We've received the input that was created from the client, and then we're going to create a vector direction that we want to move, and then we're going to try move with velocity. This is a multiplayer try move with velocity. Cool. Let's try it out.
Well, let me ask you before we launch this. I see that we're still all at the value of 0 all the way across the board. Didn't we need to set like a -1 or a +1 so the value has directional movement? I remember we talked about that previously.
Let me open that up and explain that again. So, and let's see, can we open both of these? So remember that when we're sending input, our input bindings, when W is pressed, we're sending an event of 1.
Got it.
So when W is pressed here, so when W is pressed, the forward backward event will be sent with a value of 1. And when S is pressed, the forward backward event will be sent with a -1. And that's what we're storing in this value. So if W is being pressed, our value that we send across the network will be 1, and if S is pressed, the value we send across the network will be -1. And so these are what we're receiving here.
Got it.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I see what you're saying. The default values you're saying were all 0.
Yeah, I didn't
and that's
understand
because we're not
the
setting.
default values could be different here in the
Ex-
variables, and then have the asset editor version be set to 0, right? So the variables hold that value, but I see the use case of needing to have it here at the core of what you're really multiplying by, because that value in your variable will change intermittently depending on how that value is being changed. So that makes sense.
Yes, and actually, you bring on a good point in that. This will get called before this is even maybe we're called, right? Like the multiplayer layer will start going like, hey, give me input now. And if we're sending 0, is okay. It's what we want to begin with. But like, yeah, if we set this to 100, so that it was 100 before this was ever set, then we'd be sending the value of 100 across the network.
Right.
You do need to be somewhat careful with the default. That just happens to be that the default value really is sort of what we would want the server to see. But it is, you do need to think about that. So that's a good call out.
Thank you.
Now, when I hit Control G, what I'm expecting to have happen is the player gets spawned, and I'm going to press WASD, and I want to see that cylinder moving. So let's try it. Server gets started. Oh, my camera is. I have camera controls. Look at that. Let's turn off our camera controls because that's also affecting things. Now, I don't know that it's stealing input, though. That would be interesting. So I would sort of expect that I would still receive that input. But let's, just to be safe, let's turn off the fly camera input. I'm just going to disable it and rerun it. Okay, I'm pressing WASD. Nothing's happening. So let's log and let's just make sure that things are being sent. We could also make sure that there's, oh, let's see, my mouse has gone down. Control tilde, let's see if that brings it back. No. Oh no, I don't have a mouse. It's gonna make debugging a lot more annoying. Okay. I'm just gonna search through the logs just to make sure there wasn't anything that's like input. I mean input, we know input's working because the camera was working. So input's definitely working. Let's sanity check a few things. Let's sanity check the graph. Yeah, I'm not sure. I saw the script runs. Right, because we saw that print. We saw the initial print occur,
Hmm.
so we know that's happening.
Do you think it's the
Let's.
variable names that are set incorrectly?
That could be. It could not. Yeah, it could be not being saved. But we'll put some prints around.
Okay.
We'll put some printouts.
This is a
Put some
great kind
print.
of call out to show anybody who's not familiar with script canvas, like this is an excellent way of finding some debugging issues for us. And the print feature can actually print out any variable, lots of different things, right?
Yeah. So I'm just gonna print. Let's say like when something was pressed, held, or released. Let's just, and then we'll grab the value that it gets sent. So this will be our first thing. We'll say input handler.
Want to zoom in just a little bit, see?
Oh yeah. Character controller input handler pressed, held, released, and then the value. Yeah, we'll just debug forward backward for now. How about that? And let's make sure this gets called. We'll do character controller. I just want to make sure that these are actually getting called. Character controller create from values. Create from values is called. And we'll do the similar thing for this. Maybe we'll print it after we receive the values. So yeah, let's do that. Let's see what net forward back is and net left right. We'll say character controller process input called, and we'll print out those values. Okay. Let's rerun it. See what happens. Okay, so it says create from values is called, and process input is called, but it's always 0, 0, 0. So let me oh, actually, sorry. Let me rerun that one more time. Just because I was on the oh, I can't see my mouse. Oh my goodness. Control Shift Clear. Okay. Because I think I was on the server trying to press, but not on the client. So let me just see. Yeah. So the oh, and of course I lost the log. That's escape. Oh, maybe there's a case where we're connecting on graph start. Maybe we need to wait a tick. I'm just wondering if we connect. This goes back to that stuff brought up earlier with like how entities are initialized. So what if the script initializes before the input handler? I don't know. I guess could that be a problem?
Just to think, if somebody was thinking about this already, the order of your nodes does not mean that it will call earlier. So dragging your nodes around in your editor, putting your script events first, doesn't mean that that's going to fire the event sooner and change the events. So I just
True.
wanted to point that out.
Yeah, although I'm talking about something slightly different. I'm talking about the interrelation between components and when you can start listening, when you could connect to a bus. So let's add a delay. We'll just add a delay, just humor me. We'll add like a 2-tick delay or something, I don't know. Let's try that again. Clear this. Server starts. Oh, but at least we're receiving events. So we're receiving, okay, so that was the problem. Or I guess in a sense it's a problem.
Hey, Gene. Okay, so we were last having a conversation about trying to finish off where we were with getting multiplayer up and running. There seemed to be some kind of bug that we were experiencing about how to get your character moving and the controls working properly. It seems that you've found a fix for it. Talk me through what we're at and what's going on here.
Yeah, so there's two things happening. One, if you recall, is that when we tried pressing Control G and running the server, it was just a gray server. And for that, I fixed it just by grabbing latest and rebuilding. I think what had happened was I built my server and my editor were out of sync, basically, where my editor was running one commit version of the build. I'm using O3DE's development branch. So my guess was that I had built the editor using one commit and the server using another commit. So I just pulled latest, I rebuilt editor and server and game launcher, and then the server started working, that's good. And the second thing was the script canvas was throwing an error. Let me open up that script again. So the error was, I could recreate the error. The error was when, try to grab that window. That is hard to grab. I'm gonna make a note of that actually. Yeah, so there's a print node here, which I wanted to use we were debugging, trying to see where the script went wrong. And basically what I had done was I had accidentally added an input here. So you see this will print out a value that we pass in here, but I didn't have any value.
I see.
So it didn't know what to print. So if I try to save this, it'll say invalid data type in input slot. It's hard to read, but they're down here in this little graph validation. Errors, there's 3 errors. And if you click on one of the errors, it'll highlight that print node in red. And that's how I was go, oh, okay, yes, that makes sense. So you could remove that by either right-clicking on the value and say remove slot, or I think you could just go like this and remove it. Yeah. So the graph is smart enough for it. We'll remove that for you.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming with that validation problem gone, does that mean that this will run now?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I'd expect to see now is in the editor, I should be able to hit Control G. If our editor server is enabled, which I'll remember to do, it will spawn a server, and the editor will connect to that server. And as it connects, it'll spawn that player. And then if I hit WASD, I should get some print logs and also see the player moving around on screen. One thing to mention about the print logs is that we pipe the server logs to the editor, and the way those are separated out are through new lines. So anything that you want to print on the server, just remember to add new lines. For now, this is a workaround. So I don't know if it's hard to tell, it's hard to see this, but there's actually a character here that's a new line character.
Oh, so is that like an ASCII control character, or is this something you can get from somewhere else? Okay.
Oh yes, so I grab it I go into Visual Studio Code and I'll just literally just grab a line. So I'm holding down my mouse and I'm highlighting this so that it's a new line. So I'm basically dragging from one line going up to the next.
Got
And
it.
once I do that, I can Control C. Actually, you could see if I hit Control X right now, it'll remove the line. So, right?
Right.
So just remove that line. So yeah, so
And what does line break do for us? What will that offer?
I just put this at the end here. So paste that in. And what that does is basically allow us to see our server logs in the editor.
Oh,
So,
excellent.
yeah. Um, those unfortunately aren't broken out right now. The stream is only broken up. It's only interpreted by looking at new lines. And if you don't add a new line, there's no way of knowing when the line is done. Right now, it's a bug. So just remember to do that. So now let's make sure the editor server is enabled. For that, we go editor sv enabled true. Okay, it's already true. That's good. And I'm going to hit Control G, and we should see our server spawn. We should see our level with the shader ball, and then we should see our player spawn in. And we should see lots of print logs.
Okay, let's see it.
So let's try Control G.
Nice. Got a server.
There's our player as well. It's hard to tell if we're getting print logs because I could see the scroll wheel on the editor console is not sticking to the bottom.
Hmm.
But I see the scroll wheel moving
it.
up. That means there are print logs. We could stop, but I'm fairly confident it's working because if I hit AWSD,
Nice.
there's our character moving. You can see him moving on both screens. It's being properly replicated from the server, from the client to the server and back. Everything's in a good state.
Now, I assume from what you're meaning is one of these open windows is the server and one of them is the client. Can you define which one's which?
Yeah, the editor is the client in this case.
Okay.
Yep.
Got it.
And you would see desyncs. So like if we did something really wrong where the editor and the client aren't agreeing, you would see a bunch of red on the server saying, "Oh, you've been desynced." So we're not seeing that. So that's good.
Looks great.
All right.
All right,
Yeah,
what's
that's
next?
cool.
What do you? So now that you have a player working, what would be the next case for us to work on to get kind of a multiplayer state working?
Yeah. I think what would be cool to see next, at least for me, would be seeing like more than one.
That would be great. Yeah.
Yeah. And let's change the camera a little bit. I don't really like this. Let's start the camera like more of a top-down view like that. Yeah. I'm gonna save the level. So we could close out the editor if we wanted to. And now what we could do is I'm gonna run the server launcher and then run the game launcher.
Okay.
And, well, let's run two game launchers. So let's see what that looks like. So what I'd expect is that we could have two players running around.
Interesting. So ideally, the state this would be doing this across multiple machines, and one person could have one and the other one could have another. And so that's kind of what we're simulating here.
Yep, exactly. But if you're testing locally, you'd want this to be a local possibility as well. But yeah, ideally you'd have the server up on a cloud, and then each game client would be on its own machine. Like I'd be playing and you'd be playing on our separate devices.
Gotcha.
Cool. So for now, I just spawned the server, and I hit tilde, resized it just so we could get everything on screen. And I'm going to call the command host. So I am hosting now, and I'm going to say load level, and the level we made was called demo. So load level demo. There's our demo level. Cool.
Excellent.
And let's run the game launcher now. We'll start two of them. We'll do it one at a time just so I could resize it and everything. So let's resize this window.
Now, if it is across multiple machines, do you have to also put the IP address in for the other machine, or how would you connect to a different computer?
Yeah, you would put in the IP address. For now, it defaults to local 127.0.0.1, so that's all taken care of for us. Okay, let's start up two of these though. Let's start up two game launchers. All right. Cool. And for game launchers, we just want to call connect. let's show our server too. For this game, first one we'll call connect. Hey, there's our player spawned in. I see. Okay,
Nice.
moving around. And let's call connect on the second. It will also talk to the server. Okay, we see 2 of them.
Excellent.
And yeah, they're being. Oh, look at that. We have some colliders happening here.
Nice.
So our
it
physics
moves
is
up.
clearly
Yeah.
working, not as we'd expect. We don't want players to run on top of each other's heads, but
Yeah.
at least we know the physics is working.
Excellent.
So that's pretty cool. Yeah.
Okay, so basing on what window you're on right now, you were controlling different players, I assume. So the first window that you're on controls the first player. So I'm assuming if you switch to a different window view, you can control the second player.
Yeah. So check this out. So I'm clicking on the bottom client window. I'm controlling the floating player, the one with the shadow. And
Nice.
if I click on the top client, I control the second.
How cool.
And I accidentally was typing to the console log. So let me hit tilde again, close that, and there we go. Yep. Boom.
Oh, that one's going below now too. Yeah, physics is working on both ends.
Oh, got pushed into the world. Yeah. Into the floor. Awesome.
That's excellent. Okay, so
Yeah.
getting towards your other example, I guess the next stages for you would be to start applying some of the real world physics that you are, sorry, real world collisions that you
Yeah.
had in your previous
Physics.
example, which is like
Yeah.
your boxes and colors and spawnables and you're pretty close at this point, it looks like.
I think so. Yeah. Let's reopen the editor and see if we can get some boxes in there getting pushed around. One other thing probably is good to consider is when you open the client and server, remember we had to type in those commands?
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of, it's not really something you'd want to do, right? Every time.
Right.
Yeah. So, again, I defer to multiplayer sample because it has a lot of these great examples. Let's see what multiplayer sample is doing. So I'm going to go to O3DE. Oh, not the .org. No, GitHub. I want to go to GitHub and look at multiplayer sample. Because what multiplayer samples using are configurations, which are pretty cool. So here's like a game CFG and a server CFG. They might also be using some registry stuff. Let me double check. Editor preferences. No, okay. So you could also, I think you could make game launcher registries and server launcher registries. So like basically whenever you open up a game launcher and a server launcher, you could have commands that get automatically run. So we won't go over that now, but definitely take a look at multiplayer sample. So if I open up server CFG, you could copy this for yourself and see here we'll call host and then load level. And then here we're calling sample base, but you could call whatever level you want. So host, load level for the server CFG, and the game CFG would call, you know what, it's not game, it's client. Client CFG calls connect. So
got it.
Just a pro tip that'll save some time. Let's add some boxes. So let's open up the demo. Our demo level, I'm gonna make this window a little bit bigger if I could grab it.
As you're working on this now, for your people who are watching, is there a reason that you would start one way or another where you would build multiplayer, the interactions that we have done here first, or build your level first? Is there a thought process behind how come we started with building the multiplayer interactions first before building a level? What's your thoughts there?
I think the interactions are really useful to see, just because even after we build our level, not much is going to happen until the player starts running into things. So it's just a proof that the client server simulation is all synced up.
Okay. And I guess
Yeah.
partly what I was getting to is that, but there is no restriction from a user's perspective, right? They can do it either way. They could start their level, build it, and then decide, hey, you know
Yeah.
what? We could really benefit by doing our multiplayer stuff now. So that's
Yeah.
excellent.
Yeah. You can. Yep. The level can be built out completely separate from the character.
All right. So what are you
So
thinking this
let's.
time? Boxes, circles?
Yeah. Let's try making some boxes
Okay.
here. Let's see. Oh, I just want to drag this out. I'll call that box. Okay, and we know we're going to want to be on the network, so I'm going to add a net binding. And I'm going to searching for net. I see there's also a rigid body. Let's do that.
Hmm.
Add required. Okay, physics rigid bodies. Got it. I'm a little surprised this doesn't also require a network transform component. I'm going to make a note of that. Network rigid body doesn't require net trans. That might be a bug,
Okay.
but we're going to try it first. And if we don't see anything updating, I'm just going to write this down so I remember to add the net transform
Got it.
as well. Cool. And then what else do we have in the net? Hit volumes. That I think that's important. Hit volumes. Let's see. What is that? Get a tooltip for that. Not much of a tooltip there. Component. Yeah, there's no
What does it say on the
tool.
title? Nothing on the title, huh?
No, it just says network hit volumes. Maybe it's fine without the. We'll just get rid of the hit volumes.
Okay.
But I'll make note that there's no tooltip for net hit volume. What about rigid body? Same for rigid body. Okay.
Now, I'm just curious, is there a need for any network rigid body component? Like, how come we can't just use a regular, because the level's shared across both instances, right? So, and the things that they're colliding into, even though they're dynamic, I mean, even though they're movable objects, you're placing them directly in the world. Or are you thinking about spawning them dynamically at this point?
Well, now no, they won't be spawned dynamically. But remember what's happening here. Imagine if we had physics rigid bodies without a network rigid body component.
Okay.
Now, I'm not exactly sure how network rigid body components implemented. We could look at that, but what I would imagine is going to happen is that on the client, like the server is going to be the one figuring out what happens when the player runs into the rigid body and then replicate that down to the client. Because otherwise, what you can imagine is a world where if these didn't have the network rigid body component, is physics is pretty chaotic, and as soon as you get one frame off, or 1 millimeter hitting a box 1 millimeter to the left or right is going to result in a different collision, different reaction.
I see.
And so the network rigid body component is going to make sure, it's going to give the server the authority to make the call of, okay, you just ran into a box. What is that box going to do now? Because the client can't just go and decide what that box is going to do now. It needs to be authorized by the server.
That makes sense.
Cool. So let's see. Okay, so we have a network rigid body component. Let's add a mesh to this.
Physicalize the object.
Yeah. Oh no, this is just the graphical portion. So we'll add a cube. A cube. That looks good. And actually, let's go over to YouTube because I could actually follow along this old demo here. Let me go to the part where I'm putting together these boxes. That'll tell us if we need the hit volumes too. So we'll leverage this existing demo. Boom, boom, boom. Here we go. So yeah, it looks like in this existing demo, I have the rigid body and then rigid body network Yeah, the networked rigid body component. Those are the only two things I see. So that might be enough.
All right.
Let's just make sure we'll watch through. Yeah, it looks like that's enough. So we'll leave everything else off. I didn't even see the network transform component. So cool. Why not? We'll try that. Let's throw some boxes around the world. Well, how about this? We'll try one box for now.
Okay, sounds good.
I'm gonna save that and shrink this so we could see our server. Actually, we don't really need to see our server. We're okay. Let's just keep this large. There is actually a setting, editor server hidden. You could do editor SV hidden. We'll just set that to true. That way the server window won't actually spawn. It'll just stay in the editor.
Oh.
Yeah. Nothing. Oh, wait a second. Editor SV enabled. Is that? It's false. Okay. Editor SV enabled. That's gonna help. Let's hit Control G again.
Oh,
Oh,
nice. It spawned for
the server still spawned, and so it's not hidden for some reason. So that's might be a bug. I'll make note of that. But
Yeah.
editor SV hidden.
I also noticed it fell through the world too, so probably because there's no physics applied to the floor.
The ground.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly. So let's fix that. Okay. Let me check out the console again. Editor SV. Hidden is true. Okay, yeah, so that's just a bug. Oh well, okay, that's fine. We'll look at our server for now. Let's add a floor. Floor physics. Or I see there's a ground here. Maybe we just add, what is this? That's just this checkerboard pattern? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's guess we could add some physics to that. I'm gonna search for fizz and see what comes up, what looks good. I think we'll want a shape collider. Make a box shape collider and just give it an ever so slightly thin height. So I'll do like 1/10 of a meter height, and then just make it huge, 100x, 100y.
There you go.
So now we kind of have I think we'll have a floor here.
Yeah.
Got a shape collider. Cool. Save that. Control G. Did it still fall through the world? Okay, it still fell through the world. No worries. Let's go back and see. What we got. Oh, was that the player that? It wasn't the player that fell through the world, right? No.
No, it was the
I don't think
box.
so.
Yeah.
It was definitely the box. Okay. Let me delete this entity. Let's see, what can we be missing? Does our floor need... Does our floor need something besides the shape collider? Does it need... Wait, it has a shape. Does it need to be a rigid body? I wonder.
We can try it out.
We could, yeah. Okay, well, yeah. I'm a little...
I'm fairly. I feel like the rigid body will start making it the dynamics of the ground start to fall away, but
Yeah, me too. Let's turn off gravity enabled and just see what happens. Or you know what else could be? It's like we'll try this, but what might also be the case is maybe the box is just starting out below the ground ever so. No, it's above the ground. Wait.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe the box started below the ground,
yeah,
so it never
that's a good guess.
saw. But I'll just raise it up just to be safe. Okay, and then enter SV enabled true.
Now, do we need to apply like the networked components to the physics floor as well too?
No, because I don't think that one won't need to be updated, right? That one is really the server and the client will always agree
Got it.
because it's always in the same place, right? It never moves. At least that's the hope.
Right.
Although, yeah, that's why I'm really not liking actually adding this because as soon as we add this rigid body, it has a mass. We don't want the floor to have a mass. This cannot be right. I don't think this can be right.
All right. We'll
But
delete it.
we'll hit Control G and just see what happens real quick. And it still fell through anyways. Okay, so something's definitely
I think
off
it
here.
has something to do with because the problem should be universal, right? So that means the character would have the same problem, wouldn't it? Probably not because
Um,
the character doesn't have
right,
the
the character
ability
has
to
a character
fall.
controller.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. We haven't told it to fall yet. There is a character controller, gravity, I think. Let's say gravity. No. Oh, character controller gameplay, I think, is the
Is the
one that
one.
will add gravity to it.
Got it.
But yeah, let's see if we can figure this thing out. Okay, wait. So our box has a rigid body. Oh, let's add a shape. Let's add a shape because I think this is the one that needs the shape. I'm search for fizz. We're gonna add a shape collider, and it is a box. Of course, it's offset. No. Um, you see how the shape is actually offset from the box there.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's offset. None of our meshes line up with the physics. Come on. Oh well. Alright, we're going to change the mesh that's used so that it aligns with the collider.
Okay.
So we found one. Type in box 1 by 1 under the primitive assets gem.
Okay.
Will do the trick.
Got it.
And then I will change the size. Where'd that go? The box shape, I'll just make it unit box again. And there we go. Perfect. Okay.
Nice. Aligns.
Saving that.
And this is
And we'll hit.
because the box itself is aligned to floor, right? And then the other one, box shape, wasn't aligned to floor. So there's just a misalignment that was happening, it looks like.
Yeah, their origin was at different points. So this one's origin looks like it's at the center of the box. So the PhysX box shape origin is at the center of the box, whereas the cube mesh provided by the Atom gem, the Atom rendering gem, is floor origin.
Got it.
Let's see what else we're gonna. Yeah, I think.
All right, let's test it out.
Editor SV enabled. True. Okay, it's already enabled. Let's try it. Control G. Sweet. There's our box. Let's go back to the editor and push. Oh, look. The box did not get updated. The box is still in the center on the client, which means that the server never sent the transform information back. I think I know how to fix that. We will add the transform, network transform component. And I don't have my mouse, unfortunately.
Up
So
a little
I'm gonna
tiny
hit.
bit. Keep going. There you go.
There we go. Call net transform component. Great. We'll save that. Run the game again. There we go. And do we push? Oh yeah, we can push it.
Look at the floor too. Whoa.
That's tripping me out, man.
That's cool though.
Hey, that's pretty cool though. Yeah.
It's
Let's
slowly
fix
going.
the floor so the floor doesn't start moving. Okay, I'm gonna Alt F4 so I could get my mouse back.
Okay.
This brings up one other thing actually, and that is every time I open the editor, I have to set the editor SV enabled.
Mm-hmm.
I need it re-enabled as the server editor.
Gotcha.
Let's fix that so we don't have to do that. So O3DE has this concept of registry and some really useful registry. Well, what's the word? Just useful commands you can use. So I will defer to multiplayer sample. Multiplayer sample is your friend. Let's go to multiplayer sample. Let's go to the registry. And what I bet we'll see is This is what I was looking for. Editor preferences set registry. Is this the one I want? Let me open that up. No, it's not. That is actually something else. That's just enabling prefabs. There is a set reg, and I'm not exactly sure what it is called, but you could do set regs for different executables. So you could say like, my game launcher will always call this when being opened, or my editor will always call this CVAR when being opened. Let's go to O3DE and let's look at the development branch. This one, and let's go to automated testing. Maybe automated testing has some set reg goodness in its registry folder. No, I'm still just saying editor preferences.
Would you have a working example of it locally on one of your other projects? Maybe you can pull from.
That's a good idea. Yeah, let's look. Let's see if I have something maybe just locally inside of my automated testing, because I like to do stuff in automated testing a lot. Maybe I've edited. Oh, here it is. Good call, man.
Yeah.
All right. So it's commands dot the executable name that that's getting open dot set reg. So we'll do copy, and we'll paste it in our network demo set reg folder. Paste, and let me just open this up so you can see what I'm talking about. Yes, this is exactly it. So editor SV enabled true. Now every time I open the editor up, it'll just be true by default, which is like
Wonderful.
so good.
Is it
Especially
require a rebuild for this?
no,
Great.
yeah, it just reads that file whenever it opens the editor and then calls those CVARs. So now we don't have to worry about that. Yay. Okay. What were we gonna? Oh yeah, we're gonna test the floor. Yeah, or we're gonna fix the floor. So let's go
Or
to the,
we can watch it go even crazier.
because that was like, man, that was pretty psychedelic. Okay, I'm gonna get rid of the PhysX rigid body.
I think that's probably the problem right there.
Yeah, I think so. And we were skeptical of that earlier. Okay, I'm gonna hit save. Control G. Boom. Cool.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Nice. And the floor stays consistent.
Yeah.
All right. So obviously now that you have one box, you can put in number of boxes, and that would
Very true.
do the same thing that you were doing. Is there something that, going into these multiplayer spaces and duplicating items like this, is there something that customers should be aware of to make sure that they don't hit any desync issues or any problems that they need to be aware of?
No, you could put as many. I mean, you might hit some, depending on how much physics is happening, you might hit some frame rate issues but I mean, that's just with any game.
Yeah,
The
of
one thing I
course.
would say, of course, is you're using O3DE, so don't do what I'm doing here by copying and pasting. Leverage the prefab system. If you want me to demo that, I would be happy to. But it's basically a way that you could have a prefab and then you edit one of the prefabs, or you edit the prefab and then all the boxes will update. So if we ever decided to add a texture to this box, instead of me having to recopy everything, that prefab would just be updated and propagate.
One of the
But,
templates-based systems, so you can actually just do it one
Yeah.
time and then make modifications to a single instance. Look at that.
Yeah.
And they're all interacting with each other. That looks awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Gene. I think this is a good starting point. I think we're going to go into prefabs a little bit the week after next, talking to some of our editor team and viewport team to talk about what that might look like in that instance. But I think this pretty much concludes our story for getting a multiplayer, state up and running. Any other further thoughts that you might want to push towards the customers as they build this instance? Is there something that you want them to read further or look at further beyond what we're talking about today to help them in the next steps they might encounter?
Yeah, definitely. I would say check out multiplayer sample. It's going to save you a lot of time. We looked at it here for ourselves getting started, but if you have a game that you know is going to be multiplayer, just definitely check out multiplayer sample, or even start with that as your starting point, because you'll save some time and you'll get all the useful network methods that don't come in the multiplayer gem.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, this particular example is very helpful for understanding what all the parts do and how they all stick together and work together as one cohesive
Yeah.
piece, so they understand what each piece of code is actually doing. Um, so I think this was a super useful overall demo of understanding multiplayer. And thank you again, Gene, for doing the work with us. We really appreciate it. We
My
look forward
pleasure.
to having you back in the next few weeks as this progresses. So thanks again.
Cool. Can't wait.
That is so fun.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, thanks everybody.
Cool. Happy deving.